Week 7 of the fantasy football season, and here's quarterback starts or sits every matchup this week. The first matchup, New Orleans Saints at the Arizona Cardinals. So right here, JAMEIS Winston, he might start this game, but they still didn't announce a starting quarterback over there in New Orleans. But either one, I'm not going to start in this one. I know the Cardinal defense isn't that great this season, even though last week they looked pretty decent versus Geno Smith and the Seahawks offense. So Winston I have as a sit. Andy Dalton I have as a sit. This ball game, Michael Thomas, Jarvis Landry most likely not playing. And these guys have been inconsistent to be guys I could count on as starters. I know they could have a decent ball game this week here, but there's no way I go to them, even with bye weeks and injuries. Now to Kyler Murray, I know Hollywood Brown, he's out 6 weeks injured for this Cardinal team, but he does get DeAndre Hopkins back. They did trade for Robbie Anderson. Rondé Moore, he's been good so far. So I still like Kyler Murray in this game. The Saints defense hasn't stopped anyone over the last few weeks here. And even with Hollywood Brown, you're getting Hopkins and Anderson added to the offense, which isn't that bad, in my opinion. So obviously Murray's a start this week. Now New York Giants at the Jacksonville Jaguars. So Daniel Jones and this Giant team, what a year it's been for them so far. 5-1. And Daniel Jones, I know he hasn't been the greatest of quarterbacks, but the worst game he's had this season, I believe, has been 13 fantasy points. So if you need a buy-in replacement or a 2-quarterback league, I still think he's a borderline option. This Jacksonville defense got off to a hot start early in the season, but the last few weeks here, they really haven't done anything to garner a matchup to shy away from. So Daniel Jones, a bye-week replacement, or deeper leagues, I got him as a borderline option. I know he doesn't have many receivers either, but he's still a guy that could do stuff with his legs, and that's what he's been doing. Trevor Lawrence last week, a nice bounce-back performance, but the passing yards were still down. It was a goal line touchdown he had in this one's Trevor Lawrence, and he's been up and down so far this season. 3 good games, 3 mediocre to poor ball games it's been for Trevor Lawrence on the season. And right here, this Giant defense is playing good football. They limited Lamar Jackson for the most part in last week's game, and Aaron Rodgers didn't do much versus them either. So right here, Trevor Lawrence, I have him as a borderline option. Now Indianapolis Colts at the Tennessee Titans. At Matt Ryan, he's starting to get a feel for this offense here. Sometimes it takes weeks or even a month or two for a new quarterback to get the system and get a good rapport going with his wide receivers. So Matt Ryan put up a monster ball game last week in Week 6's victory, come from behind versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. And this week, Jonathan Taylor possibly could be back in the backfield, even though I thought Deion Jackson did a great job in that ball game. Him and Alec Pierce on the same page over the last few weeks. He scored the game-winning touchdown, and Michael Pittman finally had a big game. So right here, I might like Matt Ryan in a division matchup as a low-end back-end start. I don't think he'll crack the top 12 in my rankings this week, but I like him as a start. And Ryan Tannehill, he's just a guy you can't count on. This Titan team built on defense and running the football. And Tannehill, he don't really have a lot of options at wide receiver. I know they got Robert Woods, Westbrook-Ikhine, but he's not really a guy you can count on as well. And Austin Hooper. So right now in a mediocre matchup here for Tannehill, he's just not a guy I could really trust, and I got him as a sit this week. Now to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Carolina Panthers. So this Buc team coming off a horrible loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers team where they were favorites easily in that ball game. So I think Tom Brady's had enough of playing a little bit conservative, and he's going to come out of this game hot out of the gates throwing that football. So he's an obvious start this week at a Panther team that really just can't do anything. And now to the Panther side of things, Walker left the game in Week 6 versus the Rams, and Jacob Eason came in, but it don't matter who the quarterback is over there. They're easy sits for me. Even in 2-quarterback leagues, you really can't count on these guys to do much. They traded Robbie Anderson away, even though he didn't do much for this Panther team. And these guys just can't get the ball to playmakers except Christian McCaffrey. But besides that, you can't count on these Panther guys, whoever's going to start. And they're both sits this week. Now to the Lions at the Dallas Cowboys. So Jared Goff on the road this season. The numbers haven't been good. And he versus a top-flight defense in the Dallas Cowboys this week that make it tough on opposing quarterbacks and running backs. And this week, after coming off a tough loss in Week 6 to the Philadelphia Eagles, I think the Dallas Cowboys are going to come out and they're going to get to Goff early and often. Hopefully for Goff, Avon St. Brown is back in this game. But with a tough matchup here at Dallas and his road home splits for Jared Goff, I got him as a sit this week. Now to the Cowboys side of things, Dak Prescott, he's saying he's ready to go into practice here today as this video is recorded. So if that goes, I'm going to give him a start versus a weak Lions secondary that's been getting torched this season. We saw him give up 48 points to the Seattle Seahawks. We saw him even early in the season in a shootout with a weak Commander offense. So right here, I think this Cowboy team could put points on the board. Dak Prescott, if he comes back, I don't think he's meeting 100% in this one, but you should start him, especially with the bye weeks and just the struggles around the league in a plus matchup in his first game back. And if Dak doesn't start Cooper Rush, I don't think he's a guy you can count on, obviously, for fantasy football. He's a guy that's a good game manager and a guy who throws an accurate ball, even though last week versus Philly, they exposed him a little bit coming from behind. But if Cooper Rush does play in this game, he's not a quarterback you're going to start this week, and I got him as a sit in Green Bay Packers at the Washington Commanders. Aaron Rodgers, I know it's been a struggle for him, and his seeing one of the best games this season has been 20 fantasy points. And now with Randall Cobb out, offense takes a little bit of a hit because he's pretty much only wide receiver. I think Aaron Rodgers really trusts 100%. Romeo Doubs has been up and down. Alan Lazard, he's been pretty decent, but I don't know if Aaron Rodgers has 100% trust in him this season here. So right now, Cobb was his main man in terms of big third down plays and stuff. But Alan Lazard's been decent, like I said. So this is the last week I'm going to give Aaron Rodgers a chance unless you got a better option. So if he can't get it done here at the Washington Commanders, he's a guy you can't count on for the most part the rest of the season. So I got him as a 1 week more start. Here's Rodgers. Now to the Washington side of things, Carson Wentz out 4 to 6 weeks with the injury on his finger. And he wasn't getting the job done anyway the last couple weeks. Here's Carson Wentz. Taylor Heineke, he's been with this Commander team the last few seasons, and we'll see what he's got. But this week here versus a pretty tough Packer defense, who's been pretty good versus quarterbacks over the last few weeks here. I would sit Heineke in this one. Now to the Atlanta Falcons at the Cincinnati Bengals. So Marcus Mariota in my quarterback waiver wire video, I mentioned him as a good pickup this week here. And I like the matchup for Mariota. He's starting to run the football more with himself now, especially with Cordell Patterson's out. That's when he's starting to rush the ball more, is Mariota. So I like him as a start. And this is a ball game they're probably going to be after chasing points and play at a high-paced offense. So Mariota, I got as a start, and it'll probably be anywhere from my 10 to 12 range when the rankings come out this week. Now Joe Burrow coming off the best game of the season for himself is Burrow. And him and Jamar Chase got back on track in that ball game in New Orleans. And now the Bengals go home, and I think Burrow could be a top 5 quarterback when it's all said and done this week here. And he's a no-brainer start. Now to the Cleveland Browns at the Baltimore Ravens. Jacoby Brissett, I know he's trying out there. I know he's playing some decent football for this Brown team, but he's a guy in a mediocre to tough matchup. I just can't trust in this one versus the Baltimore Ravens. This Raven team coming off a bad loss after winning 2010, they were up versus the New York Giants and blowing it. In this one, they're going to make sure, I think, that they're going to stop Jacoby Brissett. And he really don't have many weapons besides Amari Cooper and the Joku in the passing game. So right now, I think this Raven team is going to buckle down and stop Brissett in this one. And he's a guy you really can't trust anyway. So I got him as a sit. Lamar Jackson, it don't matter the matchup. I know the last couple weeks the numbers have been down, but he's a quarterback you're starting each and every week. Especially, he knows what this Brown team likes to do on defense. The next game, New York Jets at the Denver Broncos. So right here, you don't really want part of any of these guys. I know the Jets are 3-0 this season with Zach Wilson at quarterback, but he's not getting the job done right now for this Jet team in terms of putting up numbers. Last week, only 4.5 fantasy points, I believe Wilson had. This Jet team is built on running the football and good defense, and we saw that in years past in the Mark Sanchez era with this Jet team. So right now, Zach Wilson, his receivers are doing nothing, he's doing nothing, and versus a pretty tough Bronco defense that held Justin Herbert down for the most part, there's no way you could start him this week. So he's a sit. And now to the Broncos side of things, Russell Wilson, I got him as a sit, and a guy that, to be honest, he's pretty much droppable at this point for fantasy football. Here's Russell Wilson. He's not getting the job done. I thought in that first quarter he looked real good, and then after that, the wheels fell off in the second half of that ball game versus the Los Angeles Chargers. And this Jet defense, they're playing great defense. They're getting to the quarterback. They're putting pressure. They're batting the balls down. And this week here, there's no way you could start Russell Wilson. This could be an ugly offensive game for both teams and a defensive battle. So both guys are sits in this one. The next ball game, Houston Texans at the Las Vegas Raiders. So Davis Mills, you're not going to have confidence in him as a start. This Raider defense I actually like as a sleeper start this week in fantasy leagues here. And Davis Mills, he's just not getting the ball to his wide receivers or making plays. So this week, he's an easy sit. And now Derek Carr, he's been decent for the most part this season, especially where we've seen the poor play at the quarterback position the whole season. Derek Carr could be a top 10 guy this week with a good matchup versus the Houston Texans. And also it's a home game where in his career he's better at home is Derek Carr than he is on the road. So right now with all the struggles in the bye weeks at quarterback in fantasy, I got Carr as a start. Now to the Seattle Seahawks at the Los Angeles Chargers. Geno Smith, one of his worst games of the season, but it was Kenneth Walker's show for the most part. A lot of yards in that game and a lot of drives where they fizzled out for the Seattle Seahawks team, where they drove down but had to settle for field goals. But this week here versus the Chargers, I think they're going to punch a few in to the end zone. Lockett and DK Metcalf, they're not going to have poor ball games like they did last week. So Geno Smith, even off an off game, I got him as a start this week. Plus, it's one of his former teams where he could want a little bit of a revenge game in this one. Now to Justin Herbert, I know he's coming off a bad game, but the good news is the Seattle Seahawks defense don't really stop anyone in the passing game, even though last week their defense came to play versus Arizona. But you throw that out the window a little bit because of a division matchup. So Herbert, we know he's a stud. We know he's a top 5 quarterback coming into the season. And Keenan Allen might be back in this ball game as well, which helps, obviously. So I got him as a start. Kansas City Chiefs at San Francisco 49ers, Patrick Mahomes. It don't matter the matchup. It don't matter the country, whatever. This guy, he's a start each and every week. And for the San Francisco 49ers, I know they play South D, but it's not going to shy away here for Mahomes. For Jimmy Garoppolo, on the other hand, decent matchup on paper where this is a ball game where he's going to have to throw a lot. In the last 2 weeks, he's actually cracked 20 fantasy points in both ball games. But this week here, I think I got Jimmy G as a sit, and I think this team's going to try to run the football a lot and keep Mahomes off the field. Now to Sunday Night Football, the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Dolphins. And I don't like any of the quarterbacks on both sides. Kenny Pickett, he's in concussion protocol. If he plays by chance, I don't like him. He hasn't shown much for fantasy so far in the early going. And Mitchell Trubisky, you know what you're going to get from him. 150, 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, something around there. And this Dolphin defense, they want to get back on track after the last few weeks here. They've really been struggling, and I think they could get healthy a little coming into this ball game versus Steeler offensive line that's weak. So both quarterbacks are benches, depending, or it doesn't matter which one starts. And now to Miami side of things, Tua is going to start, it looks like, in this ball game. But I wouldn't be a fantasy owner confident to throw Tua out there in my starting lineup right away here. We got to see how he reacts to taking his first hit. And we got to see if all his skills are there where he's making quick decisions and plays. Because that was a scary hit, no doubt about it. His career possibly could have been over. But it's very surprising to me he's coming back in a 3-week span here is Tua after clearing the protocols. And Teddy Bridgewater, we saw him last week coming in relief for Thompson, who went down in the game. And he actually put up decent numbers. But if by some chance Tua don't play in this one, I don't like Bridgewater either, because this Steeler defense, they've had their moments this season where they've stopped quarterbacks and made plays. So this ball game, I don't want anything to do with any of these quarterbacks. And they're all sits this week. And now on to the final game, Monday Night Football. The Chicago Bears at the New England Patriots. So in this one, I don't want to deal with these quarterbacks as well. Justin Fields, he's just not the guy right now. He looks to run a lot of plays. He holds on to the football too long. And he's trying too hard to be a pocket passer instead of going with instinct on time here is Justin Fields. And right now, he don't have great weapons in Mooney and Kmet, his top 2 options, not doing much. Offensive line ain't great. And he's a quarterback that don't make quick decisions. And versus Bill Belichick defense, that's a recipe for disaster. And I got him a sit this week. And now Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi. I know Zappi's coming off 309-yard passing game. But this bad defense, believe it or not, is a pretty stout unit. And I think this could be a low-scoring, grinded-out type of ball game on Monday Night Football. And a sloppy one like we saw in Week 6 with the Bears and the Commanders on Thursday Night Football. So right here, if Mac Jones is back, I still don't like him either. And I don't want to deal with this situation. So they're both sits for me. So that's every matchup in Week 7 at the quarterback position starts or sits of the fantasy football season.